Hey there, Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to our very first episode of Way of the Warband. This series is dedicated to showing players how to use Warcry as well as Warhammer Underworld's warbands, not only in those game systems, but also using them in games of Mordheim as well. Now, for those of you guys who are unaware what Mordheim was an amazing skirmish game that was based in the setting of the Warhammer Fantasy universe, back before Games Workshop decided to kill that line and replace it with Age of Sigmar. Oddly enough, and interestingly enough, this also takes place during the same period of time when the Empire was going through a civil war, and it's also the same time period that Warhammer the Old World is supposed to be set in when that game eventually comes out. In fact, I'm actually crossing my fingers and hoping that when they release Warhammer the Old World, they'll also re-release Mordheim as well, as a way to be a gateway game for players to play Mordheim and then actually get into Warhammer the Old World. It takes place the same time period, so I'm not sure why they wouldn't do it. So because of that, in order to help prepare for that, a lot of players out there like playing Mordheim. Now, to be fair, Mordheim is a dead game. It is no longer receiving any official support from Games Workshop whatsoever. But with that said, though, the Mordheim community continued on playing this game well after it was killed. I think it was killed back in the early 2000s, I believe. And so because of there's unofficial rules are out there for players to play games of Mordheim and to actually have a lot of fun. And that's what this series is dedicated for doing. What the series will do is I'll focus on different Warcry warbands as well as different Warhammer Underworld's warbands as well, and then talk about how you could use them in your games in Necromunda as well. I'll talk about what warband they would actually fulfill in that Mordheim setting. I'll also provide you a starting roster at 500 gold crowns, so that way you can start playing with your warband in your campaigns of Mordheim as well, and I'll also give you a little bit of a rundown on the tactics for this particular warband in these videos. So today's video, we're going to start off talking about using Warcry Iron Golems in your games of Mordheim, and the reason why is because there's a very specific warband that this set of miniatures can be used for. After all, if you can use the same box of miniatures from multiple gaming systems, then you're absolutely winning. So with that being said, let's get this video on a roll. So first of all, let's talk about what kind of warband the Iron Golems would make. Now, they could be fulfilled as multiple different types. You could say that they could also be used as Sisters of Sigmar. After all, these miniatures are somewhat general neutral looking, so you could actually say you want to make them Sisters of Sigmar if you want to as well. For me personally, though, I think Iron Golems would make an excellent pit fighter warband in the setting of Mordheim. If you want to know what a pit fighter warband is, it's basically pit fighters in the game of Mordheim are gladiators, usually slaves, captured prisoners of war, that kind of thing. They're thrown into gladiatorial pits where they fight to the death for the entertainment and for gambling and for generating revenue. So because of the way that these guys look with their armor and the way that they're walking barefoot, a lot of exposed flesh, they look like Roman gladiators from ancient Roman times. And so because of that, they make an excellent pit fighter warband, especially with the weapons that they have. Now, when it comes to Iron Golems as a pit fighter warband, you do have access to several different types of special rules. First of all, you have what's called Free the Slaves. Free the Slaves is a rule that states that you will never take prisoners of war and you will never enslave anybody, because pit fighters are escaped slaves themselves in that setting, so they'll have that special rule. You also have in the pit special rule as well. When you do capture your opponents, instead of actually enslaving them, what you could do is put them in a fighting pit instead and generate revenue for your warband. One of your fighters would actually fight this prisoner of war in a fight. If they win, they get experience points and also generate revenue for themselves. Of course, you eliminate your enemy captured opponent as well. And when it comes to their alignment in this setting, they're actually anywhere between lawful to neutral to even evil if they want to. So they're very flexible in case they're using alignment rules for Mordheim as well. And not to mention, almost every single pit fighter and a pit fighter warband do come with the pit fighter skill. And what that skill does is that if you fight in a building or in ruins, you gain additional +1 weapon skill and +1 attack. Now, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Mordheim is full of ruins and buildings as well. It takes place in a ruined city, so you'll be able to exploit this skill in almost every situation that you run into. So now that we're done talking about the general rules for a pit fighter warband for Mordheim, let's talk about your heroes as well as your henchmen. So first of all, in a pit fighter warband, you have to have a pit king. That is going to be the leader of your warband. They cost 80 gold crowns as well. They also have the leader skill as well as the pit fighter skill. Like I said, that pit fighter skill is pretty much standard for almost all your fighters. And then for your heroes, you also have anywhere between 1 to 2 pit fighter veterans who cost 35 gold crowns apiece. They also have the pit fighter skill, and then you can take anywhere between 0 to 2 pit fighter initiates for 15 gold crowns apiece as well. Now, the pit fighter initiates do not have the pit fighter skill, and that's because they're initiates. They're brand new to the warband, so they haven't developed developed that skill yet. You also have a 5th hero you could choose from as well, which is the Dwarf Troll Slayer, who costs 50 gold crowns. They come with both the Pit Fighter special rule as well. They also have the Hard to Kill special rule, which makes them harder to put casualties on in your games of Mordheim. They also have Hard Head, which means they take a lot less damage from stun, so that also helps out as well. They also have Hatred towards Orcs and Goblins, as well as the Grudge Bearer special rule, which basically means it limits you recruiting Elven hired swords for your gang, but that's not much of a big problem. And the Death Wish ability as well. Now, when you do take the Dwarf Troll Slayer, however, according to the unofficial Mordheim Rulebook 2.1 rules, you have to substitute one of your heroes for the Troll Slayer, either one of your Pit Fighter Initiates or one of your Pit Fighter Veterans. In my opinion, you're better off just going with the Pit King, 2 Pit Fighter Veterans, 1 Pit Fighter Initiate, and then replace your second one with a Troll Slayer. And the reason why that's the case is because your heroes help generate income in Mordheim, so you always want to maximize the number of heroes you have in your warband, so that way you can always generate more credit as well. Now, for your henchmen in a Pit Fighter Warband, you obviously have Pit Fighters, which are your basic standard gladiatorial fighters. They cost 35 gold crowns apiece. They all come with the Pit Fighter skill automatically, and they also come with what is known as Arms Master skill. The Arms Master skill allows you to ignore difficult to use rules for your weapons. These are actually a couple of weapons in Mordheim that are really powerful, like Morning Stars, for example. They're single-handed flails that give you +1 strength bonuses in close combat for the first round of combat. However, they have this rule attached to them called difficult to use, which means that you can't use paired weapons when you use a weapon with difficult to use rules, or a shield to protect yourself if that weapon comes with difficult to use rules. So because of that, these Pit Fighters automatically ignore that, which means you can give them a second weapon to strike your opponent with, or a shield to defend themselves, and they can still use these difficult to use weapons very easily. Pit Fighters are the pwn. That's also why they cost the most amount of gold crowns for a henchman. Then you can also recruit in between 0 to 7 pursuers in a Pit Fighter gang. These guys also have the Pit Fighter rule as well. Pursuers are kind of like your more long-range fighters. They could take weapons like pole arms, for example, which always gives them always strike first in close combat, even if they are charged. They also take javelins as well as throwing weapons. So these are more of your ranged fighters for your warband as well. You only get up to 7 of them if you want to. But probably the best fighter that you can get for your henchman is the Ogre Pit Fighter. You can only have one of them. They cost 165 credits. And they are the pwn. They have the basic stats of an ogre, which makes them very tough as well. They also come with the Pit Fighter skill, which gives them increased weapon skill and additional attack. And there's a lot of ruined buildings as well as ruins and buildings in a Mordheim situation. They also have they also generate fear, which makes them really nice. Now, unfortunately, they do come with large, which means that they are easier to hit in shooting attacks, and they have slow wit, which means they only gain half the experience that they would normally get as they level up. But if you can manage to get an Ogre Pit Fighter become a hero, that's absolutely devastating. In fact, in my very first campaign of Mordheim that we did on this channel, my friend Sister Cyril did that with her Pit Fighter. He became a hero as the course of the campaign went on, and he was just destroying everything in his path. So that kind of gives you the rundown between the heroes and henchmen that are available for your warband. So now that we're done talking about that, let's talk about your starting roster and what you can do to create a 500 gold crown warband from a single box set of Iron Golems. Alright, so this is going to be your starting roster for a Pit Fighter Warband using the rules from the Mordheim 2.1 rulebook. You can get this online. It's absolutely free to download as well. Now, this starting roster will consist of 500 gold crowns, and you'll need just one box set of Iron Golem miniatures to actually play this Warband. So if you're worried about buying miniatures, if you just have one box set of Iron Golems, you're ready to go. So first of all, your Dominar will be your Pit King for your Warband. He's going to cost you 90 credits. He's going to have a halberd for that +1 strength. He's also got leadership as well as Pit Fighter skills attached to him as well. Your Warband Drill Master will be a Pit Fighter Veteran. It's going to cost you 55 gold crowns, and they're going to have a Ward Chain as well as the Pit Fighter skill. The Ward Chain acts kind of like a steel whip, and that they can engage targets up to 4 inches away. Your Signifier for your Iron Golem Warband will be your another Pit Fighter Veteran at 45 gold crowns, and they're going to be only armed with a hammer as well as a Pit Fighter skill. And of course, your Armator, which is the little dwarf Iron Golem guy, will be your Dwarf Troll Slayer. He's going to be your 4th hero. He's going to cost you 55 gold pieces. He's got an axe as well as the Pit Fighter skill, Hard to Kill skill, Hard Head skill, Hates Orcs and Goblins special rule, Grudge Bearer special rule, as well as Death Wish special rule as well. And then one of your Iron Legionnaires, any one of them would be perfectly fine, will be your Pit Fighter Initiate. It's going to cost 18 gold crowns, and they're going to be armed with a hammer as well. Now, for the last 3 miniatures of your Pit Fighter, of your Iron Golem box set, 2 of your Iron Legionaries will be just normal 2 Pit Fighters. It's going to cost you 76 gold crowns for those guys. Those guys will be equipped with hammers. They also have the Pit Fighter skill as well as the Arms Master skill. As the campaign develops, I suggest you get them Morning Stars to that, or Morning Stars. They use that in close combat to make it a little bit more deadly. The miniatures could also have those as well, and if you want to give them shields to protect themselves, you can do so, or give them bucklers so that way they can parry in close combat. That's also a really deadly combination as well. And then lastly, your Ogre Breacher is going to be your Ogre Pitfire. It's going to cost you 168 gold crowns, and he's going to be armed with only a hammer. Now, if you'll notice in this game of Mordheim, if you notice, the equipment that these guys start off with is very limited. It's not like Necromunda at all. In fact, your guys in Mordheim usually, more often than not, are finding a very bare minimum amount of equipment to start off with. And this is actually quite common to see in starting warbands when it comes to Mordheim as well. So if these guys seem like they're not that well equipped, well, the reason why is because you're also sinking all your costs into an Ogre Breacher for your Ogre Pitfighter, who's going to do most of the damage for you as well. So that's also the way I'm thinking it as well. You'll notice in my videos when I talk about the rosters, my rosters will be a little bit unorthodox because I'm just going with the idea that you have that one single box set that you're going to be using and not buying multiple ones. Of course, if you want to buy multiple ones later on, as your campaign develops, you can free to do so. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'd highly recommend it. In fact, if you want to actually use, if you have like a Spire Tyrant box set from Warcry, they could actually be painted easily to look like Iron Golems, and you could use them in your Pitfighter Warband as well. So now that we're done talking about the starting roster for the Pitfighters, let's go and talk about your tactics. Now, tactics in Mordheim are a little bit different than Necromunda. In my Necromunda tactics, I usually talk about a support fire and assault fire team is pretty much what I like to use when we talk about Necromunda, but for Mordheim that is not necessarily the case because some warbands can't take any shooting weapons at all, and also in a lot of cases, in a lot of Mordheim scenarios, you're not really necessarily fighting your enemy head on. In most cases for the scenarios in Mordheim, you're actually running around grabbing materials, grabbing equipment, grabbing loot, that sort of thing, and then if you happen to fight your enemy, you just kind of fight them that way as well. Generally speaking though, what you want to do is you want to divide up your warband into small little sub-teams, like fire teams still, but they're not going to be as what's the word I'm looking for? They're not going to be as dedicated to a specific role as it would be in Necromunda. In Mordheim, your warbands are a little bit, your fire teams are a little more flexible. It's kind of depending on the situation that you run into, what you're going to do with them. So for example, your support fire team will consist of your Dominar, as well as your Armatar, which is your Dwarf Pitfighter, as well as your Pitfighter Initiate as well. And what their jobs are going to do is they're going to run around and try to grab materials, grab loot as well. I call them your support fire team because they'll probably be attacked the most by your opponent because your leader is in that little fire team. So you want to have these guys be kind of away from the enemy, running around, grabbing materials, grabbing loot, that kind of thing. Now your assault fire teams, however, these are the ones that are going to do most of the fighting in your warband. Your assault fire team number one will consist of your Drill Master, as well as one of your Iron Legionnaires, as well as your Ogre Breacher. That way they can just go straight towards the enemy, fight anybody that's in their way, destroy them, and move on. Same thing with assault fire team number two. It's going to consist of your Signifier, as well as one of your last Iron Legionnaires. This team is going to be kind of supporting attack, but they're mainly going to be running around grabbing loot, grabbing weird stone, that sort of thing is what they're probably going to do. Now, either way you look at it, each of these fire teams can fight on their own if they have to against your opponents, but your assault fire team number one is going to be doing most of the offensive fighting, while assault fire team number two and support fire team basically runs around and grabs materials instead. And that's pretty much how you would use this warband in your games of Mordheim. Alright, so there you go. In conclusion, the box set of the Iron Golems are some of the most characterful and really cool looking sculpts that Games Workshop has created as well. Plus they have that Roman gladiator look, which makes them perfect to use in your games of your games of Mordheim as well. So in my opinion, if you could use the same box of miniatures for multiple games and play multiple systems with that one single set of miniatures, then you're basically winning the miniature wargaming hobby, in my opinion. Because miniatures wargaming is expensive, and you can play multiple games in one box set, that's the better. Now granted, you'll need to be a little more flexible with your miniature representation on the tabletop, but if you don't care about that and your gaming group doesn't care about that either, then by all means use these guys on the tabletop and enjoy some really awesome Mordheim goodness. Hopefully Games Workshop will release Mordheim in the future. If they never do release Mordheim, that's not a problem because there are rules out there that can still be used for that, and you can use this warband of Iron Golems to represent pit fighters in your campaign. So that's good to do for this, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blog.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. I'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.